Okay. Very good. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's very, very nice to see. I'm starting to get to know some of you a little bit more now. It's very, very nice to share these Sunday mornings and Sunday afternoons for me here. So thank you so much for coming and for listening to my blah blah blah. You know, I'm not gonna say anything that actually you guys haven't heard before. You have incredible teachers and receive so much incredible teaching. So I'm just here to share a little bit of what I have been experiencing as a monk and as a Buddhist for a couple of years. So really, this is more than some teachings, it's just a sharing as I see it, as I like to see it. So I think this is always good for us to begin with strong motivation. Motivation is so important in Buddhism, not only in Buddhism, but actually in everything that we do. Let me just turn off my WhatsApp so we don't have any noise, back noise. So we just try to create a very, 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 very strong positive motivation, because that's what is going to take the entire, this effort and this energy that we put now is going to take us for the next 1.5 hours. And the results that will come from that motivation and that effort that we put, we need to make sure that they are positive results and they going to actually benefit not only ourselves, but especially all sentient beings. So in Buddhism, we say that the most strong motivation that we can have is the motivation to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all. And this is called Bodhichitta. So we try to create this Bodhichitta attitude, this compassion, unbelievable compassion that we can create on our hearts and our minds. So we try to create these today together. We just bring to mind all of the suffering that is happening in the world right now, all of the wars, all of the incredible suffering that people are creating, not only to themselves, but to others as well. So we try to bring these as a way for us we can help in many, many ways. But the most beneficial way that we can help, it's actually to transform our minds. And that's the most beautiful gift that we can contribute to our time as human beings. So to develop this incredible potential that we already have inside of each and every one of us. And the way to really develop this potential is to become a Buddha, an enlightened being. So we really try to bring to mind that we're going to use this time here together to develop this wish to benefit others, to try to see our minds, to interact with our minds in a positive way. And like that, we can wish and make aspirations that all of these effort will ripen into benefit, not only to ourselves, but to others. So we try to just set with this motivation, each of us individually, but also as a group. How many people are not being able to actually share the Dharma, listen to the Dharma, but we are here. And it's just so incredible how this interdependence of each other that we have in our lives. And in this way, we can see how we all dependent on each other and how every single aspect of our lives is interdependent. So this interdependence is very, very important for us to generate this motivation. Due to sentient beings' kindness, we are here. In this case, due to His Holiness, to Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and in the case of Thupten Kungaling, also to Jackie, who created and started this place. So due to all of these kindness, we are able to be here today. So we can take refuge in Bodhichitta as a way to start our talk today. So I'm gonna do 2 times in English and 1 time in Tibetan, because it's very important that we try to connect with the words, to connect with what we are taking, what we are talking, because otherwise it just becomes very empty words, especially that we say these prayers many, many times during our lives and during our practices. But we really need to try to connect with them. You know, what it means to go for refuge, what it means to be enlightened, what are the three Jews, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and how do we get this? How do we actually generate this enlightened state? And also we need to understand the motivation. So to become a Buddha, to be able to benefit others. So we try to really bring to mind, to our heart, try to melt a little bit our heart with these prayers. So we do it together. You guys can do individually. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soki chonam la janju bardu dani kapsu chi dagi chunye gi pe sonam ki drola panche sangye drupa. Thank you, Patti. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so now that we did a motivation, we took refuge and we generated bodhicitta. For some of you that are here again, I can see the Sherry's here, Cecilia's here, Pita was here. How was the homework? Because I sent some homework last week. So the homework was for us to try to stabilize and familiarize ourselves in accepting what is happening in our minds. So anyone wants to share or wants to contribute something that they thought about during the week? Let's see. Someone wants to share something.
I did do it and it helped a lot, but I have to admit that immediately, let's say that I was discouraged and I could feel it. Immediately I wanted to analyze it. Yes. And I was like, no, he said to just accept it.
Exactly.
And that helped a lot to kind of like, okay, it's here. I don't need to know why, if I'm right, wrong, like, yes.
Yes. That's very good, Cecilia. That's very, very nice. I feel that this is one of the things that is exactly what we normally try to do. We're jumping into analyzing, judging, or, initially we already start with conceptualizing what is happening in our minds instead of just staying with what's happening. So for those that were not here last week, one of the things that we talk a lot about is that to transform our minds and to really try to get the essence of the Buddhist teachings, we need to first accept where we are, accept what is happening in our minds, accept what is happening in our hearts, so we can actually use what is happening there to then transform. Because normally what we try to do is that we try to, as I like to say, dash the bullets. We just want to be happy, we just don't want to suffer, but we don't accept things that are happening to us. So we don't accept, and we try to avoid this in many, many ways. So we try to dash and we try to not feel it, and we try not to kind of like allow ourselves to feel it. So the idea of this exercise to just try to not only be mindful of what is happening in our minds, but allow things to come up, it is actually to slowly be able for us to create this safe space inside of ourselves, so things can arise. And then when things can arise, then we can act on them. Then we can actually start practicing Buddhism. Then we can do mind training. Then we can see their essence. Then we can actually really practice Dharma. So that is something that I always feel, and this is totally my delusion. But sometimes we don't talk so much about it in the Tibetan teachings, because sometimes the Tibetan teachings already goes with some assumptions or some aspects that we Westerners we don't have so much. And let's say we Westerners we also live in a very different time, right? When we have lots of inputs and a lot of emotions, a lot of things coming up. So it's very important, very, very important that we try to develop this inside of ourselves, this acceptance and this safe space, as I like to call, a safe space where we can actually transform what is happening inside of us. So this was very, very nice that you were able to do it. So like this we can use like everything that is arising, right? As Cecilia was saying, now, oh no, I'm just going to stay with that, I'm not going to self-analyze it, because this what is happening in our minds is going to be the object of our meditation, is going to be the path that we're going to actually use so we can achieve enlightenment. So it's very interesting that we try to actually cultivate this, right? Meditation, in a way, as many of you know already, the word in Tibetan is called Gom. I really like Gompa, right? Gompa means a place for meditation. So Gom has this actually, the real meaning is familiarization. So we need to familiarize ourselves, with our minds, with our consciousness, with our experiences. But when we are actually trying to dash the bullets, how can we familiarize? How we can actually familiarize with what is happening if we are trying to avoid it, if we are actually not comfortable, or we are trying to not feel what is happening inside of us? Then it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very, very hard to meditate. It's going to be very hard to actually develop the stages of the path. As many of you now already are familiar with the word Lamrim, which is a really, really, with our school, in Gelupa school, is how we can develop if we don't know where we start. From where we start, then we can slowly develop. So to familiarize ourselves with these aspects of what is allowing, what is happening, so important, so important. So maybe we can do a little meditation on that. We can do some gom, some familiarization. We can try to maybe see what is happening with us, what is allowing us. I'm not gonna go into many so profound now, but we're just going to try to generate this space, because this space also is going to be very important for us today when we're going to talk about, as I spoke in the last session, I said, okay, how can I actually talk about Dharma in daily life? There's so much. Dharma is so extensive. But I said, let's talk about the Dharmapada, right? That little three. And also there is in the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha prayers that we do sometimes before teachings. And the little three verses that we have that we talked about, how we actually develop. I have it here somewhere. So the Dhammapada is here. The verses are: do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind completely. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So today we're going to talk about what it means non-virtuous actions and how to not commit them. So for that, we need a safe space. Let's say like that. To do that, we need actually to feel safe so we can understand what is non-virtuous, which is a big word already in Buddhism, and we use it a lot, and we sometimes don't know exactly what it means. So we're going to explore that a little bit today as well. So let's try to just find a comfortable position, and we try to generate a little bit of space, and not only this safe space inside of us, but there's also calm space and clear aspect of our minds, so we can be here together. So we just try to focus a little bit, try to find a comfortable position. If you're sitting on a chair or if you're sitting on the floor, most important is to try to keep straight back. How we can actually develop a bit of a flow going up and down our spines. Just try to find anything that is comfortable, that is not going to make your body too tight or too loose. Put your hands in your lap or on your thighs or on your knees. You can close your eyes, or you can just open a little bit to get some light. And then slowly we just Try to bring the attention to the breath. We try to slowly calm down the mind and focus the mind into an object. So this already creates space, calm. Just bringing again and again the attention to the breath. So we can create this space. And we can start thinking, just trying to analyze, not actually interfere, go into the stories, but what am I thinking? What is happening in our minds? It's a thought coming, there is a space. Am I feeling something? Don't try to go into the story about past or future. Just try to acknowledge what is happening. Maybe we are feeling tired, so acknowledge tiredness. Maybe we are feeling sadness, so just acknowledge sadness. Maybe we are feeling happiness and relax, so we acknowledge that as well. Try not to judge, to change, not to interact with anything. It's time to give us a little break of our self-judgment, our wishes or wants. Trying not allowing ourselves to just stay with what is arising, acknowledging it. Open this space to develop this confidence. We can deal with things. Whatever comes, we will be able to deal with it, to go through it. To develop this self-confidence, this confidence in our own goodness, our own potential. We tend to be so tough on us, so judgmental. Here we are going to this space where we nourish ourselves, we allow things to be, we don't dash the bullets, just let them pass. stay what is happening, knowing that everything's going to be fine. And deal with things. And go through whatever arises, whatever obstacles, whatever difficulties. We need this space to deal with things in a beneficial way, not only for ourselves, especially for others. See that the same way that we just want happiness. We don't want to suffer. So we know that we'll find a way to achieve these two. To be able to take care of ourselves in a beneficial way. So developing this space and this compassion inside of ourselves, we are able to bring this to the world. So every interaction we have with others, we bring a little bit of this space for them. And by cultivating this peace, this compassion, this allowance inside of ourselves, and can help the world to do the same. To encourage people to do the same with themselves. And like that, be able to transform and bring peace to every being. The inner change that is a result creates a better world for everybody. Slowly, slowly, we can start open our eyes, moving a bit, and be able to try to keep this space with us during this next few hour, also during our day today, the week we're gonna bring ahead in our jobs, in our families. I hope you guys found a little bit of space, a good space over there. So it's very important that we try to, someone wants to share something about it, someone wants to talk about it. As I said, I'm very willing for people to interact, to say something, or if you guys have any questions or any comments as well, also can put on the chat, no party. I think that also if people have any doubts as well or want to talk about it. So I always feel that for me, I need to, when I started to learn about Buddhism, one of the first things I heard was the Four Noble Truths. I think many people heard about it. And if you really think about the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. And I remember when I heard about it, I was just like trying to really understand what they were talking about, because wow, it felt so negative. So kind of like what they are talking about, suffering already. The first thing you got is just like suffering, the truth of suffering, and you're like, oh wow, for me it was so kind of like in a way impact me. But when I started to listen to it more and more, and this was in the same let's say class that I heard, I started to see the deepness of it as well. How profound it is, the first teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. And they were talking about, kind of like how the truth of suffering, the truth of the origin, the cessation, the path. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to have to study this for years and years to try to just touch a little bit of what that means. But it's true. But the most important things that we need to do with these Buddhist teachings is that we need to make our own. We need to actually bring it to our lives and our realities to know what it means, the truth of suffering. Yes, the Buddha gave like the definitions and all these incredible teachers that we have. They gave the book, the by the book answer. But we need to make ourselves actually understanding what is our own suffering. The way I suffer in a way, or the way that my mind works, creates my own suffering in some ways that maybe Cecilia or Patty, they don't create in the same way. Even though the basis, the origins, and the nature of the suffering is the same, but the way we experience is actually ours. So that's what we need to kind of like look for. That's what we need to understand. We need to understand how I suffer, how I create my own suffer. Because normally we can develop a lot of intellectual understanding about these teachings, and especially when we start to listen to all of the Tibetan kind of like definitions and divisions, and the more and more you study, we have the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, and then you have all of the different aspects of it, and so you start to understanding intellectually, but how does it touch you? How do we develop this? So it's very important that we decide to try to bring it to mind, because this is one of the things that why the Buddha said why it is the first thing, And I'm talking about this because we're going to talk about the non-virtuous actions, right? That we talked about. So why it is the first one? Why it is the first thing that we talked about? Because first it needs to understand where we are. So that's why I started the talking about last week, and then this meditation now is to realize where we are. If we don't know where we are, we cannot evolve, jump. If I say to someone, oh, I want to go to, I'm in Florida, and I say, I want to go to Miami, and they're going to say, where you are in Florida, And I'm going to say, well, I'm in Orlando. Okay, you're going to go, then you need to go this. First, I need to acknowledge where I am. I need to know where I am. If I don't know where I am, so I cannot actually go beyond it. So that's why the Buddha started with the Four Noble Truths, and the first truth is the truth of suffering, because we need to understand how we are suffering and what it means. And we can understand these when we talk about non-virtuous actions in many, many different ways, right? We can talk about the truth of sufferings, but we can also, I heard that you guys were talking, we have receiving teachings on the three principal aspects of the path with Geshe-la. So you guys know by now that one of the first aspects is renunciation. What it means, renunciation. So it is also very interesting that we start three principal aspects of the path of right with renunciation when we actually need to know what we are renouncing. So in order to understand what we are renouncing, we need to understand what is the suffering, what is creating like our samsara. Because samsara is not out there, right? Samsara is not happening kind of like as something external. Many people like I see here in the monastery, you know, they say kind of like when we go outside of the gates, oh yes, we are in samsara right now, you know, outside of the gates of the monastery. And I always make fun and I say, oh wow, when you're inside of the monastery, you don't have samsara? Good on you, because wow, my samsara is back there with me, you know, when I'm in the gompa, when I'm in my room, when I'm studying. So samsara is not that like a place outside full of kind of like, you know, desires and things and oh of the suffering, or you know, the war is where samsara is happening. No, samsara is in our minds, right? Samsara is a mind state. It's actually wrong view of reality. That's how we create our samsara. So it's very, very important that we kind of like establish and understand these big words that we talk about in Buddhism, and then we say, you know, what is samsara, or my samsara, or renunciation. So renunciation has to do with that as well, right? How we actually can understand our own suffering, so we can actually renounce it. So this is one of the ways that we can analyze, you know, what are non-virtuous actions. The other one that we can talk about is also the different types of vows that in Buddhism we talk about. We have what we call the lay vows, or the praktimoksha vows, and we have bodhisattva vows, and we have tantric vows. So all of these vows, they have different, let's say, purpose, right? Goals, what we want to achieve, why we're doing this. And the first layer of the vows is what we call self-liberation vows. Even many people don't think about, but actually to become a monk, the first aspect of the vows, it's a self-liberation vows. I want to liberate myself from what? From suffering. So that's why we need to understand what actually suffering means and how suffering works and how that actually is created by our actions of body, speech, and mind. So that's why it's so important that we divide on the non-virtuous actions. On that's why it is in some ways the kind of like the basis of the Buddhist teachings, is the first layer of when we are actually starting to talk about the Buddhist teachings. And that's why it's so important for us. And that's why I said I need to spend years and years and years trying to understand how I am creating my own suffering. What is my own suffering? Of course, we can talk about, you know, the origins of our suffering, the second noble truth. And then we can talk about karma and afflictions, which is the two aspects of, but that's a big word as well. Karma, afflictions, what that means to me. So we can start to analyze our daily lives, right? We can start to see how in our daily lives we create our own sufferings. And this is the best like practice. The best way to actually practice is to actually analyze our day-to-day lives. Is not sometimes we say, you know, Rinpoche always says that people sometimes comes to him and says, you know, people comes and say that they don't have time to practice. And I remember was I saw these incredible teachings with Tenzin Palmo, and she was saying about that people would come to her and say, oh yes, people come to me and say, I cannot practice. You know, I don't have time to practice. I have a life, I have a job, I have kids, I have this, I have that. And they were always talking about that. And then she said, yes, but you can always be practicing all the time. Practice is not something that you just do when you sit down on a cushion, right? Practice is to actually analyze our minds and to be with our minds and to actually know what is happening in our hearts and emotions and everything that is part of our being on a daily life. That is the object of our practice. That's what we need to actually get familiarized with. What is happening, how things trigger us, how things, the like why for someone, you know, something triggers, I don't know, you know, when someone comes and says something, oh, you look fat, or you look like this, or you know, you look tired today, or you look like this. And all of these things is start to kind of like create these or maybe we just sometimes wake up, you know, and we are not in a good mood. So how we can actually analyze our minds with whatever is happening. That's why I keep on kind of like bringing back to the point that we need to accept what is happening in our mind so we can transform it. But this is very important, that everything that we do, it can be the object of our analyzing, but not only the analysis of it, but we need to understand the goal. We need to analyze how we are suffering so we can transform it, so we can actually be able to go beyond what is happening in our minds. And then we need this safe space, we need to be able to actually transform this that is happening in our minds in a positive way. And for that, right now, why we don't do it? Because first, we don't know how to do it. Nobody told us. Our daily lives, we never someone came to us and say, oh yes, you can transform. Don't feel anger. Don't do this, or how to do it. We just say, someone, like, sometimes people just say, oh, you're in a bad mood today. I'm, as a good Brazilian, I'm very expressive. So we here in the monastery, sometimes we come down to go to have breakfast with the monks, and people know exactly how I am, exactly how I'm feeling, because I already come with a face, or I already come, with a smile, or I already come a little bit with, like, serious or things like that. So it's very good to kind of like analyze, and people already say, oh, okay, today he's not feeling so good, so let's not ask about this, let's not talk about it. But it's true, it's kind of like sometimes, yes, things come up, and that's fine. This is one of the things that I talk a lot here with the monks, because we have these tendencies, and I think that sometimes when we become monks, even more, to be very tight on how we should be, very strong on I should be like this, or I shouldn't be like that, right? There's these two opposites that we actually bring to our day to day. It's kind of like I shouldn't be like this, and I should be like this. So this creates this very, very tiring mind, and very tight, and a lot of suffering for us, because actually we don't use what is happening in our minds to be able to transform it, because we don't allow what is happening. So many times I have these days with the monks here, and I say to them, it's like, yes, I can see that I'm in a bad mood, but I'm allowing this. And sometimes these things take time to actually stay with it, especially when sometimes something happens that is very strong, like someone passing away, someone that we like, and we say mourning. No, we kind of like, we stay with that. And that's extremely valuable that we stay with that. Doesn't mean, again, that we're gonna just dive into it and, kind of like just like make it heavy or make it too much, but just allow that to come and pops up. Sometimes we are feeling, we are talking to someone and something reminds us, and then that comes. That's fine. That's okay. As long as we allow this to happen, because otherwise this is going to become so much of a pressure in our minds that we cannot even transform it, we cannot deal with it. And then when we actually have to deal with it, it's already something big like this, that it becomes much more problematic than actually just allowing at the moment when something is happening and staying with it, just allowing it to stay, and then say, okay, maybe here I can use a bit of patience, I can use a bit of compassion, and slowly be able to transform. But first we need to stay with that. So that's why it's so important that in our daily lives we don't be so tight on what is happening, especially negative thoughts. And I say about that because normally when we talk about the 10 non-virtues, with the non-virtuous actions, and kind of like, we normally have these kind of like idea that we shouldn't be like this, or we couldn't be feeling like that, especially I think now as Buddhists, we sometimes we have this tendency of wanting to develop compassion to all sentient beings, and we need to love everybody, we need to be like this, but we are still suffering if someone puts the finger in something that we don't like. So sometimes we kind of like don't allow us to actually feel it, and oh no, yeah, I shouldn't be feeling this, I shouldn't be feeling that, oh wow, I shouldn't do this. And this becomes very tight, and this doesn't become actually practicing Dharma, because we are not using our mental space, what is happening in our consciousness, what is happening in our emotions, what is happening in our feelings, to transform. So I have so much. I'm so sorry for the North Europeans here in the monastery, because they sometimes they're so tight and so kind of like with this, and then comes this Brazilian, and then I start to make like this on them and say like poking them so they can actually express a bit of what is happening. because there's a little dog participating as well today. So that's very good. And then we sometimes we don't allow this to happen. So then people become very tight and they understand a lot. We understand a lot of the concepts, but we cannot actually transform it. So that's what I'm talking about when we talk about the 10 non-virtues. And the Buddha started with the to not commit the non-virtues. He was to understand. We need to understand why these bring suffering to us, and then how these bring suffering again and again and again. That's the reason, not to make us kind of like be so tough on ourselves. Otherwise, if we are so tough on ourselves, then forget about it. Forget how to actually we can develop, because it's a long path, right? It's a marathon. It's not a 100 meters thing. And, it's just, we're going to go just from here to there and then everything's going to be fine. No, we actually need to know that it's going to take time for us to change our minds, because it took time for us to be where we are. In a way, it took many countless lives for where we are, and to develop these negative patterns that we created. But that's fine. So now we are actually so incredibly lucky, so incredibly wonderfully fortunate that we actually met Dharma, and then we can transform it. Now we have the tools. Now we have the possibility of transforming and being like creating a happier life for ourselves and others. So slowly, we take it slow but consistent. That's the most important thing, that we try to familiarize our minds again and again with what is happening and how we create these sufferings, right? Because these non-virtues of what is actually, it's just ways or patterns or habits of acting, of speaking, of thinking. This is what it is that we're doing. That we are just like ways of thinking, ways of speaking, ways of acting. That is happening again and again and again. But it's very funny because I don't know if you guys have these, but for me, it's sometimes it's so easy to see how other people are, right? You have these kind of like, you can say, oh, that person is like that. Oh, that person, oh, they have these habits. It's just so like this. Oh, don't even try to talk about it because it's always been like that. But it's very funny. It's very hard to talk about our own patterns and our own thinking and our own ways, because we are so inside of the story, inside of our minds, that we don't have this space to see what is happening, right? We don't have so much of actually this self-analysis, self-awareness of what is happening, because we think that it's going to hurt if we do this. We think that we're going to kind of like not be able to deal with it. We think that it's not going to be, it's going to be too much, or I don't want to feel this, and we try. So that's very interesting that we kind of like, we are very good at analyzing other people's habits of speech, of ways of talking, or ways of acting. It's very easy, but to analyze ourselves. So this is what makes us a Buddhist. When we actually start to go inside, when we start to use, the knowledge of Buddhism as a way to analyze our own minds, as a way to go inside, as a way to see what is happening here. Because from that, then we can transform. From that, we can see what is going on. So I feel that is very, very important that we kind of like take out these big words of non-virtues and we shouldn't act like this, and we should, yes, this is the goal. This is where we want to achieve. That's what we want to get. We don't want to actually produce more and more causes for our own future suffering, right? This is the goal. But where we are right now, until where we are, and here's the goal, there's a big gap. So we slowly we go. And slowly we go familiarizing ourselves. We go getting to know what is happening. We can get to understand. We can get to allow ourselves for these things to happen. And then we can transform them. And then we can go beyond it. Then we can go. So it's very important that we talk about the non-virtuous actions because of that. Because they are the way that we act, the way that we speak, the way that we think. This creates experiencing of suffering by the person who is actually thinking, by the person who is actually talking, by the person who is actually also talking, thinking, and acting. So that is why it's so important for us to understand that this creates our suffering. Here, as I said, we're talking about, that's why I started to talk about the different types of vows and the different types of renunciation, because that's what we need to talk about right now. We're not talking about how actually only, yes, the way we act not only creates suffering for us, but creates suffering for others. But let's say that this is later. We're going to talk about in the next session, next Sunday, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how also we can actually develop good qualities and actually to benefit others. But now we need to understand that. Now it's just us and us. Let's say like this. It's me, myself, and I. We need to understand that, because sometimes also in the Buddhist path, we go straight to bodhicitta. We go straight to compassion. We go straight to, to four immeasurables. But we need to understand first this. We already, as I say, we are so attached to the result that we don't look for the causes. We don't go and to analyze the causes, but we just want, the final result. That's how we are right now. That's exactly how all of these new generations of products and technology, it works, right? We want food and we already want now, so we want it like this, and we already kind of like, it becomes just this easy thing to way of thinking, that we just all the time wanting, the kind of like the result of it, but not understanding the causes, the kind of like the process that needs to do that. And the first cause that we need to understand is the suffering that we create to ourselves, the body, the mind, the way we act. It's very, 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 very special that we can actually analyze these on our daily basis, because otherwise we cannot go beyond it. We cannot go like beyond of the, just as I said, there was a monk that got inside. So it's very important that we try to create this space and try to understand the 10 virtues, because the Buddha, he gave us this incredible detail of how our minds work, and not only the body, the speech, not the mind, but the body and the speech. So when we try to analyze our actions on a daily basis, that's what we need to check. And we start with the body, because the body is a little bit easier, let's say like this, to understand and to control. We need to understand how kind of like, they say the teachings, which are always like, I don't know if they say in these words, but that's how the Westerns maybe they say, is like, it's much easier to control if you get angry with someone, to control to not punching that person, than actually swearing or thinking badly about that person, right? It's kind of like it's a bit easier to refrain from actually doing something with our bodies than actually doing something with our speech, and to doing something with our minds. So it's so important that we start to see as well how we do that. But one of the aspects of also this is not only seeing how we do it, but also see how good we are actually sometimes in doing this, right? We are very good, or at least like most of us here, we have never killed a human being, even though sometimes I'm sure we have thought about it. I'm sure we have kind of like really felt that we wanted to really, felt so strong anger towards someone or towards something, or, even the dogs sometimes, poor things, when they, when they don't behave, or the kids. So, but we are able to refrain from that, or we are able to refrain from killing an animal, an insect. Sometimes people don't like cockroaches, or kind of like, or even mosquitoes or things like that. And some people are able to not actually kill that. So we also need to see how incredible we are on this, how incredible we already are doing these things again and again in our daily lives. It's not that we're kind of like, oh yes, we need to start now. No, we also need to acknowledge these 2 points where we are. It means not negativity only, and it's also a tap on the shoulder and say, well done. We haven't done it. We haven't done that already. We are not doing this. And then we can analyze it in the different aspects, or not only of our body, but also of our speech, right? We can see easily how we actually, because normally if we're going to go I was trying to avoid going into the very kind of like, divisions of the body, what negative, harmful actions are, the body, because most of you already know we have to take in the life of others. The other one that we have is taking what has not been given to oneself and engaging in what we say inappropriate sexual behavior. It's good. We can talk about these things because maybe this also helps us to see in our minds, right? Because I I always say this to the monks here. I'm so easily, I take a pen and I just stay with the pen and I forget to give back. This is something that I'm the best one in taking a pen from someone and forgetting to give back. In a way, it could be considered as stealing, right? Because the person didn't give me um that that pen. So we can actually see as well how sometimes we have these tendencies of taking things that are not necessarily ours, right? This is very important that when we talk about, even like, even we talk about that this could be considered even when we don't pay taxes, or, we go to a restaurant and someone comes and kind of like, they didn't put something in the bill that you took it, like for example you go and you like you have the like a dessert and the person didn't put in the bill, and then you're like, lucky me. I didn't kind of like have to pay for that. We have normally this kind of like, oh wow, very good, but actually in a way it is a type of stealing. It is a type of actually not like being able to, once we recognize that it was not supposed to be given to us in this way, but we're supposed to, we made a contract when we entered the restaurant that we were going to pay for the things that we were going to eat, that we also do that. Why is so important that we see these things? Because the basis of doing negative things to our minds, either with the body, the speech of the mind, is that these will create suffering for us. That's how we need to understand it. Why it creates suffering for us is that not only by karma, that means cause and effect, that means that what we are creating now is going to come up in the future, in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 1 hour, in another, in 10 years, in 10 lifetimes, in whatever period you want to put it. It creates these tendencies in our minds to do that again and again. And all of these, the problem is that we are creating. So I can see that many people are starting to come in because they didn't know about the change of the time. Patty is saying to me, and Javier is nodding. I'm so sorry, Javier. Yes, the time change in America, so it changed at the time of the teachings. So it was good for me as well because I didn't know. So Patty told me that. So as I was saying, is that we need to understand that creating these negative or these negative actions that we do with body, speech, and mind create suffering for ourselves. One of the bases of that is because of course, is the karma, but also one of the things that I found is so important is that this creates afflictions. This creates us this idea of kind of like all of these destructive emotions, as sometimes we translate afflictions. And all of this is because of self-cherishing, right? It's because of this egoistic view, right? So when we are thinking about that, oh, I want to kill a cockroach, is because we don't want to feel something. We don't want to feel, oh, that is disgusting or whatever. We don't want to feel that. So again, we need to understand that we want to act in a way because we don't want to feel in a certain way, because we don't allow ourselves to feel in that way. We don't allow ourselves to feel uncomfortable. We don't allow ourselves to feel sad. We don't allow ourselves to feel in that way because we want to avoid. We want to try to avoid. So these will create all of these chain of actions of body, speech, and mind that will create more and more suffering for us, ourselves now, what is already happening, but also is going to bring in the future. So when we are stealing as well, the example that I was giving about the when we are in the supermarket or in the restaurant, also, right? We don't understand that, oh, I am good because I don't have to pay, right? It's a totally self-cherishing attitude. It's only thinking about us. We are not thinking about that maybe actually the waiter is going to have to pay because she forgot, and actually, that person is going to suffer for that, is going to have problems, is going to have two things like that. Or we don't see that actually creating, if we kill an animal, if we kill the suffering of that animal, we don't think. When we are creating non-virtues, is that because we are not thinking about others? That's the baseline. Let's say like this. That's the basics. Is that because we are not thinking about others, we are creating negativity. Because we are thinking about ourselves. We are thinking about how I can actually benefit from there, how I can be like this, you know. And that again is very funny, because when I say that, I could see some of your faces, some of you already kind of like analyzing. And then what comes when we think about being selfish is guilt. That's what it comes. We start to feel guilty about what is happening in our lives. We start to feel, oh, I shouldn't behave like this. I shouldn't be like that. I should be like that. This is exactly what I was talking about in the beginning. This is exactly the type of mind that is very tight and very unrealistic about who we are right now. We are selfish, and that's fine. If we acknowledge that we are selfish, if we acknowledge that we are thinking about ourselves, then we can change, right? Then we can move from this. We just need to acknowledge that. But who wants to acknowledge that? Who wants to say, I am selfish when thinking about that? We don't. Well, at least me, I cannot talk about you guys, but I know that I am with my big ego. I can say the first, no, wait, what? We always come with ways of kind of like saying, no, but it was not the intention, and this and that. And sometimes we use even kind of like the Dharma to transform it into say, no, but I was thinking about, yes, this person and these, and we start to create all of these stories in our minds to actually not see the real down to what is that about, what is really about. And we are not here to judge. That's why I did the meditation on creating this safe space. We need to create this safe space for these things, this awareness of how we work, how our mind, how our speech, how our actions work. We need to create this safe space so we can actually see, oof, I'm being selfish here. Ooh, I'm lying here. Ooh, I'm doing this. Ooh, I'm doing that. That's fine. We just need to acknowledge. We just need to stay with it. We just need to see things as they are. Because then it's very fun, because we talk about seeing things as they are, but just as they are now, conventionally, how it's happening, how it is right now. And then we can see about how things really truly are. But this we're going to talk about later, right? So that's the beauty of it. It's kind of like by understanding how our minds work, understanding, acknowledging, creating this safe space, we can actually see where we are. But that's why it's so important that we not only analyze our speech, analyze our body, but we see how this creates suffering for ourselves, how this actually creates the suffering not only now, but in the future. And we need to understand that the results that we are creating now, what we are experiencing now, it is because of that, because we have been creating this in the past, right? So that's also very interesting to see the patterns, how patterns work and how habits work. And we need to understand how our minds work, because we're just getting used to, right? We believe that that thing should be like that. We believe that we should be like this. And then we start to do it again and again and again and again. Why? Because sometimes we don't want to see things as they are. So we don't want to see that we are lying. So we say, no, I'm not lying. So I continue lying because I don't acknowledge that I'm lying. So I say, oh no, I'm not like stealing, because no, but because we start to create these patterns, these stories of kind of like, no, I'm not lying, I'm just saying this because I want to do that, because it is for your own benefit, because I want this to be like this, we start to do like this. So this is the path that we are creating. We are not creating the path to actually say, oh, actually I'm lying, right? I am lying. And I need to stop doing this, because I can see that this is not creating suffering for me right now, but it's creating the future. And this is going to create suffering for that other person. that I'm lying to. So I don't use the actual Dharma to transform our mind into the lying. I'm actually using into the story, because then I start to create all of these stories, and I create to start to say to people kind of like, no, because I'm talking about compassion and I'm talking about this and that. And then people is going to kind of like talking about the compassion that is supposed to be. And then you're going to discuss, or maybe you don't want to feel that. So we start to actually use the Dharma or use our own analysis into the story and not into the, the negative action itself that actually happened, which was the lying in the first place. So we need to use the Dharma in what is happening in our minds as well. And that's why we need to kind of like try to undo it. These kind of like aspects that we create in order not to feel what is really happening in our minds, what is really happening with our bodies, what is really happening with our speech. So this is, for me, I'm just sharing how I work and use the Dharma in our daily life, in my daily life. So because sometimes, being here now, I'm the director of the monastery, assistant director, and very important, and you have all of these things. And on a day-to-day basis, we have so many things that come, right? Like so many things on our daily lives, interactions with others, and things that you don't like, things that you have to deal, especially when you have kind of like difficult conversations that you have to say to people, that you have to express the things maybe are not working so well, or you would like to express something that you would like to see something done in a certain way. So difficult, to actually be able to stay with this feeling of, yeah, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it because I know that this is going to be uncomfortable, but I see the benefits of this. If I try to actually have the pattern of trying not to go into conflict, trying to avoid, trying to not see what is happening, this just becomes a snowball, just becomes more and more problematic, more and more things. I think that then we can don't use the real teachings into the first aspect of the mind, but we in all of these problems that we created again and again and again with trying to avoid what is happening. I talk a lot about this with some of the monks, because sometimes, at least me, I have a lot of these ideas of wanting to please others, and not wanting to kind of like sometimes express what I really want to say, but because of discomfort, right? I don't want to. I don't want to talk about it. Because I don't want people to actually talk to me and something or not say something. And then I create this entire story or this entire problematic just because I want to avoid this. So instead of actually staying with this, well, I created already these entire problems, and then I didn't talk with the person that I had to talk, or I didn't say, and then this created another problem with another person, and then this and that. This creates so much problems. If I should just be able to actually stay with what's happening, to just say, well, I'm feeling like this. And when I can do this, when I can be able to say, I'm trying to avoid it because I'm feeling like this. So, but I'm going to try to see if I don't follow the reaction of my mind, and I try to really embrace with this feeling, and I try to actually see if I can be, kind to the person, and if I can be kind to myself without wanting to please, but really being true of what I want to say. So let's see how it works. And every time we actually shift a little bit of this pattern that we have, and we just try to use it in a different way, this space opens. And this gives more self-confidence for us to continue, more actually trust that we can do it, that we can actually be able to transform our minds and to change negative patterns that we created for ourselves in the first place. Because this is one of the things that we need to understand. We created our own self-cherishing. We created our ways of suffering. We create our ways of behaving. Because, like for example, I don't want to use always Patty as an example, poor Patty, but, Brian or Esther or Arpita, so each of us, we actually use like different ways of creating non-virtues, right? We need to understand how our non-virtues, how our negative actions are. We need to understand how it is for us. And we are the only ones who can actually transform it and change it. So we need to know how we actually can undo it. We need to understand how we have these tendencies, these wishes to dash the bullets all the time, how it is our ways of dashing the bullets, how it is our ways of escaping, how it is. That's what we need to understand. But for that, we need to create this safe space. We need to create this allowance. We need to create this compassion, this created this love and kindness for ourselves. Because otherwise, it's going to be very tough to change our minds if we don't allow this to actually happen. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was kind of like saying, oh, because, I am like this and I need to do this and I need to say, and I said, have you realized that maybe just for, you think that you are like this. Nobody told you that you should be like this. But this was such a wake-up call for him that he said, it's true. I don't actually need to repeat the same thing that I was doing before. I don't need to repeat the same way of thinking. I don't need to repeat the same way of acting. I don't need to repeat the same way of speaking, because I can see that it is bringing suffering for me if I do it in this way. It is bringing suffering because I create all of these other things, and because I don't allow to feel what is happening, because I'm afraid of feeling what is happening in our minds. So it's so important that we really go through it, that we go slowly, step by step. Like it is a continuous progress that we go, that we actually go, that we can be reframing, right? I think refraining, not reframing. Reframing also is a very good idea, because we need to reframe the way we think. We need to kind of like change the perceptions that we have about ourselves, so we can actually refrain from continue behaviors that is actually not benefiting us. And the basis of the Buddhist teachings, that is exactly what we are talking in these teachings, is just that, to be a Buddha, right? That's the goal. What it is to be a Buddha, and to be a Buddha is actually to totally stop creating suffering for ourselves. That's the first aspect of the word Sangye in Tibetan. Sang, it means totally cessation of our own sufferings. But then first we need to understand how we are suffering. We need to go to acknowledge the suffering so we can completely go beyond it. So it's so important that we see that how this is profound in actually developing a space and acknowledging our own suffering. And that's why it's so beautiful that the Buddha started with the Four Noble Truths and talking about suffering, right? And suffering comes from this self-cherishing, from our self-grasping that creates beliefs in the existing I, and then creates all of these dashing the bullets, as I like to say, to not allow this to be. So what I'm trying to come across, especially, I think it is parts of our teachings when we hear so much about the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, and we learn about Buddhism. I feel that it's very important that we use it to our minds. There's no other option, to use to our experiences, to use to our hearts, to use to our day-to-day life, to use to our every situation. Because sometimes, we see some people that, they're studying the Buddhist teachings, and then, something happens and they say, oh yeah, but that person said to me this, and, and then I don't want to kind of like, I'm very pissed off with that person, and I don't want to see. And then we stay for years with that inside of us, because we don't want to allow ourselves to say, wait a minute, maybe I made a mistake here. Or maybe the other person made a mistake. I'm not allowing the person to make a mistake. So if we want to be real Buddhists and 21st century Buddhism, where actually we're going to have to deal with more and more and more situations that are going to be uncomfortable for us, because the world is so interconnected nowadays. We are all the time connected. We are all the time having interactions with each other. We're going to need to actually practice these teachings. you know. They say in the teachings that Padmasambhava called it the generation times, you know, that we like the generation of our times, and we can see in a way, you know, like we are having problems with the environment, we are having wars, we are having kind of like so many things, and yeah, let's say that the situation looks pretty degenerated in a way. So it's so important. It's the most important thing that if we want to survive and if we want to help the world, that we generate this mind, these positive minds, by first acknowledging the negative minds that we have and refraining from that. So it is the first way. So that's what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, you know, like that's why he started with the Dharmapada and the teachings of the Buddha. And then we start always with these, with the three principal aspects, as I said before, is that we need to first stop creating more harm. That's where we need to start first. Then once we kind of like decided and we can actually be slowly refraining from these, then we can start thinking about others. Then we can start about developing the Gye, the Sang Gye, the Buddha aspect, the other part, which is to develop completely our potential, to really open our minds, open our hearts, love unconditionally, have compassion unconditionally. We have this potential right now. We can do it right now, but we are doing the opposite. We are creating more suffering. We are actually, you know, creating actions that we are just creating suffering for ourselves and others. So that's why first we need to create that. Then we need to kind of like stabilize it. So we need to familiarize ourselves with how to do it. We need to see on our daily lives how we are doing this and refrain from that. And slowly, by understanding and acknowledging what we're doing, then we can start refraining from this, right? We can start really seeing how we're talking when we talk about the afflictions and the destructive emotions. Of course, we don't have time to go into all of them and we don't have time to develop all of their understandings, but we can see that all of them have this basis of self-cherishing. So the basis of actually trying to develop the best way to develop and refraining from them first is always thinking about others, right? How it would be to the other person or to other or to even myself, you know, if I actually refrain from doing this, right? So to include it, one of my teachers, Geshe Lamsang, he's a beautiful Geshe, one of the old like time Geshes from Tibet, and he's now the teacher in Valencia in Spain. He used to say, when we talk about self-cherishing, we don't need to kind of like thinking about, oh yes, we need to benefit all sentient beings and we need to benefit all. We just need to think about that right now. What is happening is that 100% of our times we are just thinking about me, myself, and I, just me. So slowly, we start to say 99.99% is thinking about me and 0.001% is thinking about others. So we just, it's kind of like adding idea, not a kind of like, you know, kind of like just refraining from me, not thinking about me and then just thinking about others, but you just start to add, oh, that other person that's here sitting close to me, how that person would feel as well. And then we start to add, you know, more and more and more and more and more and more. And then these, I like maths, you know, so it's kind of like it's a percentage. So you just say, oh, you're 99, 98, 97. So you're just adding more and more and more and more. So that's how you can develop a good heart. That's how we can develop actually bodhicitta, how we can develop about thinking about others. It's not about just thinking about, oh, I'm a bad person, I need to think about others, I'm selfish, I shouldn't be doing this. Oof, that's too tiring. Oof, this is not gonna, you know, evolve in any way in a good direction. This is just kind of like self-beating, you know? No. This self, which is the self-cherishing that we have now, this egocentric, it is the self-cherishing that is going to bring us to enlightenment. We don't need to, we need to understand this self, this mind, this continuum that we have right now is the one that is going to bring us to enlightenment. So if we're just punishing ourselves and we're just kind of like being tough and being, it's not going to go anywhere. So we need to develop a space. We need to acknowledge, we need to be okay with these negative afflictions that are happening with us. We need to accept them. Then we need to improve them. Then we need to develop. Then we need to start seeing how they harm us. So we can start seeing also how the opposite of them actually create virtuous mindsets on our minds, right? How by me being angry, I create so much suffering from myself. I love these. This is one of the things that I really like, when we talk about anger, is that we can totally see it how it is only related to us in a way. Because when we get angry with someone and we don't express it, I'm talking about here, of course, because for the other person, if you get angry and you punch in or do something, the person's going to feel it. But normally we don't do that on a daily basis, but we just stay with that bad taste, with ourselves. So it's totally only affecting us. So why we need to continue to doing this? Why are we doing it to ourselves? Right? That's something that we need to see, and then we need to experience. Someone like maybe said something to us, and someone did something to us, and we get angry, and anger comes. First, what we try to do is we try to dash the bullets, and we don't do that. But then once we kind of like, by doing these meditations in this space, and say, oh, I'm getting angry. Anger is already here. So now what do we do with that? Right? Anger is already kind of like here. Normally what we try to say, we try, and our minds start, and then the bad taste starts, and we need to see it, to taste it. And then we start to taste the bad taste, we need to say, why am I doing this? Because it's just harming me here. It's just harming myself. And it's only making a bad taste to me. So I need to change this. I need to shift. I need to go beyond. I need to get out all of this habit. It's very hard. I'm not gonna say it's easy, because the patterns and the habit, it's very strong on our minds. But slowly, if we can just see kind of like acknowledge that this is happening, and then we don't use our patterns to cope, our coping mechanisms, as I like to say, as dashing the bullet is another word that I used to say, coping mechanism, for trying to avoid what is already there. But if you allow it to just be there, then we can say, okay, anger is coming. What can I do? And then, as most of you already know, patience is one of the most beautiful things that we can cultivate in our minds when anger comes. We can also cultivate compassion towards the other person that is harming us, right? But as you see, the person is not harming us, but we are harming ourselves by allowing, by staying with that thing, by seeing that as a self-existing and as existing from its own side. So that's why we can use, and then we can use all the lojong, all the mind training, all the different aspects to shift our mind. So this is like how we can do it. Then, now I'm gonna go a little bit more deep. What's the most way to actually be able to undo it, to actually be able to get out of this negative mind state? It's by applying emptiness. This idea that things don't exist from its own side is just me cultivating that view. It's just my perception that it is. So we need to cut to that mind, that thick, foggy mind of anger that we have sometimes. I don't know you guys, but I sometimes, when something like this comes, not only like here, even in the heart, sometimes becomes, physically, sometimes, it becomes like, when you have that thing of like self-cherishing is here, the anger is here. But actually, how we can actually cut to this? So we can apply also emptiness. We can apply the vision of trying to see things as they really are. The things don't exist from the outside, but it's just a way that I'm seeing causes and conditions, and I'm labeling it in this way. So emptiness is such a powerful, that they say it is the antidote for all the negative emotions, for all the non-virtues, for everything that we do. Emptiness is what cut everything, cut the root. It's very hard to realize emptiness. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't apply. It doesn't mean. But we can start with these two aspects. So we can start these, when we anger, when a negative emotion comes, then we can try to apply one day of the antidotes. We can apply compassion. We can apply practicing patience, and like this, slowly. So to undo it, the negative that is already there, right? So, and then we can also do emptiness if we want, right? And with these two, slowly, Again and again, we just go putting one and the other, one and the other in our minds. And then we can overcome these mind states. Then we can go beyond these mind states. So this is what is, I don't know if I'm making everything more confusing for you guys, but what I really feel is so important that we understand that we need to acknowledge where we are. We need to acknowledge what is happening in our minds. And for that, we need a safe space so we can actually allow things to come. And then once we allow things to come, then we can apply these antidotes. Then we can apply emptiness. Then we can actually change and transform our minds. This is the sum up, let's say like this in a very short. It's like as the Dharmapada said, like no practice, no virtues. That's it. That's what we are trying to say over there in that little phrase. That's what we are trying to come into the path. That's what we are trying to bring. What we are trying to bring in our daily lives. And it's not only with anger, but any negative emotion that comes, jealousy and pride and whatever it is, whatever we can apply to our minds like this. So that's a little bit of what is so important for us to really try to develop to cultivate, right? To actually be able to meditate, to cultivate in ourselves. So anyone has any questions or anyone has any comments or anything that anyone wants to talk about? Jackie wants to say.
We do have a comment or question here. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Yes, I like your perspective and so on about not being so tight with ourselves and being more open to accepting new experiences. About meditation, I only meditate at home and in the Gompa. Can you talk about your experiences meditating in different locations, outside, different people, different locations?
Absolutely. What is your name? Sorry. Stephen, thank you so much for the question, Stephen. Yes, I'm not a huge meditator, but I can just talk a little bit, about my experience. One of the things that I feel is very important as well when we talk about being tight and being like this is that we also need to acknowledge where we are in relation to how external things already still affect and influence us, right? Because sometimes many people talk about meditation and they say, oh yes, but you can meditate anywhere, you can meditate, you can do things anywhere at any moment or things like that. And I find this very tricky. Sometimes it is true that we have this potential and then we have this possibility of actually meditating, while people, especially with mindfulness, many things come when people say, oh, you can meditate while you're driving or when you're in the bus or in the train and all of these things. Yes, it is true. We have this capacity or this potential, but right now, because of so many of distractions and how our minds work, it's very hard. So it's very important that we create a safe external space. That's very good, Steve, because we can talk about that. Not only we need to create an internal space so we can meditate on things, but we need to create also an external space for these things to be conducive, right? That's why we have retreat places. That's why we have retreat centers. We have a wonderful place like Oseling, or you guys have Vajrapani, or many other places, or in Vermont as well, Milarepa Center. We have these because the outside space and the outside circumstances and the outside environment, they help our minds to do their jobs, let's say like this, of meditation, right? Make this safe space that we are trying to create internally also in an external way. I feel that it is something that we really need to kind of like see for ourselves how and what actually works for each of us. I highly recommend that when we are starting to meditate, that we start with group retreats or in a group, because this creates and gives us the possibility of having more self-confidence. As I said, we to develop this self-confidence not only externally, we also need externally, help and support for these meditations to work. So it's very important in the beginning, and also for many times. I really enjoy group retreats, because this creates also a space, with others, meditating with others that support our own practice. I don't know how you guys felt when you guys came back to the Tupten Kungaling, but like being when COVID was, everybody was so isolated. It's nice, and we can share here on Zoom. But when we are together and doing the same thing, it's almost like the energy is just going to one direction, and it's so powerful, so special to be together and be able to actually meditate together. So this is very, very important that we try to meditate, to create these group retreats, and so we can actually develop also the self-confidence for one time. Slowly, we can also do solitary retreat, right? I had the opportunity to do some solitary retreat in Laudo, which is where Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you guys can talk about Laudo with Jackie, everything. Jackie is an expert on Laudo. So you guys can, Laudo is this huge and beautiful place in the mountains close to Everest Base Camp in the Everest area, Solo Kombu. It's just an amazing place. And over there, the peacefulness of the place, it was so calming for the mind, and so important for me to be able to create not only a routine that encouraged me, because the place was so conducive for me to have a discipline, because discipline is so hard sometimes to create. But this place was so kind of like inviting for this to happen, that it was so much easier to create this routine, this discipline, to actually engage into the meditation practices and things. But we don't need to go to the top of the mountain to do this. We can create in our own days, in our own houses, in our own minds. But it's very important to create what I like to say. I was talking about a safe space, but a sacred space as well, externally. A place that it is a place for us to connect with this mindset of meditation, to connect with this wish to actually be able to meditate. So it is inviting, it is welcoming, it is, warmth. There is this kind of like, when we kind of like feel, sometimes when it's raining, we feel like, welcome in our sofas and laying down, it's kind of like the same thing that we need to try to look for, a place that actually we can find comfortable to be able and to wish to meditate. Because to go against this pattern is very hard, because we are not used to. We are just used to actually repeat the patterns again and again and again. So actually to be able to go inside and to wanting to deconstruct these patterns, we need a lot of external help yet. Yeah, still, we still need that. So that's why it's so important that we having the different. So we start with kind of like group retreats. Some people use apps nowadays. There are many nice apps, that people actually can follow, guided meditation. And then slowly we start to have this confidence that we can actually make meditation for ourselves, like do a retreat for ourselves. And then we do a short retreat, we do a week retreat, which is also very, very good. Always good to not go so much isolated, but in a place we can do in our houses. You guys have a perfect example of Venerable Tendrum, who is doing retreat in her place, So then we start to get more self-confidence and self kind of courage and discipline to follow these meditations, right? To follow these possibilities, these external aspects, because then the external, we start to understand that everything's coming from our minds. Right? With meditation, the goal is that we start to understand more our minds. We get familiarized with our minds, and we start to understand that actually what is creating all of this suffering, it is our self-cherishing. We understand that this self-cherishing comes from this self-grasping, which it is coming from the ignorance. So we start to get familiarized with this process. So we start to understand and to let it go of the kind of like more concrete aspects of ourselves. So we start to actually be able to calm the mind. And we be able to go deeper and deeper into the layers of our minds. So the meditation needs to be able to produce this. So in order to produce this, we need to help ourselves to do that, So we need to be able to kind of like bring aspects in our daily lives. I always say to people and all the teachers, we always say, the morning is a very like important aspect of our practice, because our minds are a bit fresh. Even though I don't know you guys, but normally people already wake up and they're already touching their phones and already seeing what they need to do, kind of like, so the mind already starts racing exactly the moment we wake up. But we can actually try to create these ideas. So one of the things that I always feel is also very helpful is try to one day of the week to take off the phone some hours without a phone. You know, I normally Sundays are my days off here, and I try to not use so much the phone, especially in the mornings, or the computer. So it's kind of like create these spaces also. And then I use this time to meditate. I use this time to actually be able to do a little bit of practice. We have we just acquired a new place here. We bought 2 years ago, 1 year ago, a new place for retreats. You know, because to do retreat and to do meditation in a environment that there's not so many distractions, because that's the word retreat, right? We are retreating ourselves, we're taking ourselves from distractions, right? So it is so valuable and so important to our practice. That's why we always try, you know, once a year to do some retreat, some self-retreat, some solitary retreat. And we also have group retreats over here in the summer. In July and August here in Nalanda, we also do group retreats. So people also can do it, and people from outside as well to come, so people can participate, so they can actually have this space, because we need to get out of our sometimes of our habitual places, so we can actually go deeper into our practices. That's why it's so hard as well to actually continue doing practices on our houses if we don't create this safe, sacred space to be able to do it. So I don't know, Steve, if this answers a little bit your question, or if I just blah blah blah. But if you want to do self-retreat, many places, I'm very happy. You know, you can get my contacts with Patty, and I can give you some very nice places. It is not so easy to find retreat, solitary retreat places, but it is very nice. I told this to Nicole one day, that I would be once that I can go to the US, you know, and I would be very good we could do a retreat together, a weekend together, you know, do Friday to Sunday. So nice, these things, you know, we kind of like, we get out, we go to a place together, everybody in the same, you know, idea, the same motivation. So important, at least, you know, to try to do these weekend retreats is just so nice, just so nice. Any other questions or any other? It's already.
Venerable Calvin, we're a little bit past time, but there is another question in the chat from Joel, okay. And he writes, is this the same emptiness from the union of emptiness and bliss?
Yes, it is the same emptiness, but the emptiness, the union of emptiness and bliss, let's say that is the realization of emptiness. It is kind of like the less, because even emptiness we can talk about in layers of emptiness, right? Because we don't actually hear about emptiness and already understand what emptiness means, right? We're going to slowly develop an understanding of what emptiness is by familiarizing our minds with it, right? That's why it's so important that we kind of like repeat and we meditate and familiarize ourselves with concepts and ideas until all of this not only becomes intellectual, but becomes starting to see an experience, right? The union of emptiness and bliss is the experience, is the result of understanding and realizing emptiness. So this is also something that it is kind of like, it is the same, but same but different, as they say in India. You know, it's same but it's different. It is the same emptiness, the same concept, but let's say that it is the union of emptiness and this is the realization, is the experience, is the result. And the emptiness, what we are talking about here, is a more gross aspect of emptiness, you know, trying to understand how things exist, trying to understand in a more conceptual way what in emptiness, what or how reality exists. Don't know if it makes sense. Any other questions or any other comments? Otherwise, I think it's already becoming time, and then we can make a big dedication. We can just try to come together a little bit, you know, bring it back of this energy that we created for ourselves and amongst each other. it would be different if we were just doing this talk by myself. So it's very important that we can see how it is important and special that we are doing this together. And we see this beautiful, positive mind that we created in the beginning, this wish to be able to use our minds, our hearts, our body, speech, and mind in a positive, constructive way, so we can be of benefit for others. So we see how we use this time, how we use our energy, our efforts, and hopefully we can see that we were able to generate some positivity. And with this positivity, we just dedicate, we just spread, as I like to say. We spread all of this to all sentient beings. We share with them, we say, I wish everybody could feel like this. I wish that everybody could actually have positive thoughts and be able to totally cessate their negative afflictions. So we wish that all of these that we created here together be able to create the causes for this. So people can be happier, so people can be peaceful, so people can not feel anger and not react to anger. So can people decrease their self-cherishing, which is bringing harm for them and for others. And all of these that we are able to actually, that we created here, all of this positivity, was because we were able to listen to the Dharma. We were able to share, we were able to connect, to study, to contemplate, to meditate on the Dharma. And all of this, we are only able to do all of this because the kindness of our gurus, especially the kindness of His Holiness, the kindness of Lama Yeshe, of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So, because we want to continue being able to receive teachings, to be able to actually listen and to contemplate, so we also dedicate all of this energy so they can actually, we spread, we offer to them, so they can have a long, stable, and healthy life and continue guiding us for many, 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 many years and many, many, many lifetimes. So we can also develop all of these qualities so we can be of benefit to all sentient beings. And we also dedicate, especially, that this positive energy touches the hearts and the minds of all the politicians that are involved now, especially with the war in Ukraine. We cannot differentiate here. We cannot say, you know, one is right, one is wrong. If we really go down to the bottom of it, they are all wanting to be happy and not suffering, just like us. So we just dedicate that they can, in one way or another, by cause and effect, by dependent arising, be able to be touched by the positive that we created here. And that this can create a mind of compassion and love inside of them, so we can stop the war very, very soon and stop the suffering of many, many beings. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys got something out of it, of my blah, 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 of my sharing.
Thank you so much, Venerable Calvin. Thank you. We're so fortunate to have you with us.
Thank you from Napa here in Deerfield Beach.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, especially for Jackie, for being there, for being so lovely. We had such a nice talk the other day, an interview. So if you guys want to hear as well on Alanda website, when she was talking about, you know, her time with Lama Yeshe It was so nice. So if people want to listen to it, it's on Nalanda's YouTube. It was very nice as well. So thank you so much for Jackie for also. I'm here due to her kindness, but also to Patty, to Cecilia, to everybody that helps to organize. It's so much effort that we put into, making these teachings happen. So thank you so much for all of the hard work and devotion you guys are putting into it. And all of you that came here to listen to me, thank you so much. You guys are so kind, and I'm very grateful to have all of you here.
Thank you, Carlin.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, obrigado.
Gracias.
Obrigada.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Ciao.
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 Maria, I was going to say that you could stay and chat with him, but he left.
Yes.
Okay.
He left.
All right. He left. All right. Maybe next week, Maria, you two can stay and talk if you'd like.
No, that's no problem.
No.
We
Okay.
talk
You talk a lot. Okay. All right. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Take care. It's okay for me to close at Tupten Kungaling?
Yes, I think so, Pat. Thank you so
All
much. for
right.
sending-
Thank you, Ralph. I'll send that information out.
Very
Okay.
good.
Thanks for coming, Sherry. Bye.